Hey, awkwardly awesome podcast starts in 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Let's try that again. 3, 2, 1. Starting right now. Hi. Good afternoon. Today I'm thrilled to have one of my amazing friends, Dr. Steve Taubman, on the show. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Steve before I bring him on, because he's just amazing. So Dr. Steve Taubman, and I'm wondering if I'm pronouncing his last name exactly right as I say that, because I usually call him Steve, not by his last name. So anyway, Dr. Steve, best-selling author and international speaker, has turned anxiety, neurosis, and emotional pain into an artistic expression of the joy of living. Doesn't that sound amazing? Having survived bullying, crippling anxiety, and low self-esteem as a child, he spent more than half a lifetime discovering how to change one's relationship with suffering and to rise to a place of happiness, success, and contribution. He now lives in Burlington, Vermont with his beloved dog, Woody, while running a part-time AirBNB for squirrels. Let's welcome to the show, Dr. Steve. Yay!
Woo! That was a fun introduction to listen to. I guess we're going to have to explain the part-time AirBNB for squirrels, right?
Yeah. We'll get to that, because that's kind of hanging in the air or in the walls. but so I read your bio and have known you for a long time, so I know some of your answers, but someone might go like, hey, Dr. Steve, I hear all this about you moving from anxiety in this hard younger life to being happy now, but Dr. Steve is 2020. Did you take this year off being happy because of everything?
Are you asking me if I'm less happy with things being the way they are?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Not really. I would say that there are certain things that I've got to be more mindful of, and certain things that throw me off course. But it's the same. It's the same process, no matter what. I mean, it doesn't matter, how much water you're treading water in is, if you're or swimming in, for that matter. It could be 1,000 feet or 20 feet, and it's the same thing, because you're doing the same process to stay above it all.
That's so interesting to hear, because I think it's tempting for a lot of people, including myself at times, to kind of wait for this all to improve before we get really happy.
Yeah, we're saving ourselves for something that may never come. That's it's a tough way to live, and what's sad about it isn't just the fact that one is living with less happiness, but also that one has essentially given away their power to make a choice. Like I do have a choice right now of how I'm going to experience what's happening right now. And if I decide, I guess I might as well just be less happy until things get better. Well, why would I make that choice?
Mm. Yeah, why would we make a choice to weaken our joyful life?
Yeah.
Based on external circumstances.
And, for me, like everything about being on this show with you is new and fresh and different and wonderful because of who you are and because of our relationship, and that made me want to present in as unique and authentic a way as possible. So even the introduction had some spins on it that wouldn't be an usual introduction. But in terms of what we're talking about right now, we're talking about the capacity to choose one's mood, one's state.
Mm.
And I've been hearing about that for years, right? Change your state and pump it up, and there's so many things in the personal development world and the professional development world that make it sound like it's just a decision. And therefore, if you haven't made that decision, there's something wrong with you, right? If you're not happy, it's just because you didn't decide to be happy. And that always really aggravated me. It always made me feel actually worse. So I'd go to motivational seminars and I'd leave feeling worse than I was when I got there, because I felt, I guess, sort of attacked in a way for being incapable of making some kind of a change. I'm feeling miserable, I'm feeling anxious, and now you're telling me that I have a choice, and this is what I chose, and that ends up being a very very troubling thing to think. And now, and this is kind of stuff that you and I talk about a lot, is it's only a choice if you understand how to execute that choice, right? Like if somebody says to you, "Oh, come on, Jason, just cheer up," when you're in a bad mood, mostly you want to punch them. Right? Mostly you feel like they don't get it. Or like, this is true with anxiety, and I do a lot of my work with anxiety, both in my own world, my own experience, and also helping other people with anxiety. And people who don't have anxiety will say, just let it go. Just, what are you worried about? Why are you being so, so blah, 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 whatever comes after. Why are you being so? Without an understanding of what it really feels like inside. So what I feel that I've been doing for me, and what I feel like my legacy is in terms of helping others, is that missing piece. It's like, I am here, I want to be here, I'm being told there's a choice, but what is it that I need to do in order for that choice to actually be available to me?
So you're kind of like saying that each of us always has a choice to purchase a $10 million mansion, but that choice is kind of meaninless unless we have the currency to make the choice reality.
I like that, because you use the word currency. There it is a certain kind of currency, right? It's not money that we're talking about, but there's a certain currency. I'm going to definitely want to flesh this out more. I'll be writing about that now that we brought it up that way. There's a certain kind of a currency that is not talked about, that has everything to do with whether or not you can live in the choice of how you want to be and what you want your life to feel like. And part of it is it's the currency of wisdom. So, if you happen to have been born into a very functional family with lots of prosperity consciousness and virtually no problems, and you're happy-go-lucky, and you're lucky enough to just be happy-go-lucky, then any other way of being seems just like a bad choice. But the other people may not have the same currency, right? Or it might be that it takes a certain kind of currency to get there if you didn't automatically were given that opportunity. Does that make sense? Like, some people are just blessed. They just came from a situation in which they were never, they've got nothing to undo. They've got no baggage to shed. But if you do have baggage, which most of us, the vast majority of us have, it takes a certain kind of currency to learn what it means to shed it, so that you can actually really be somewhat happy-go-lucky. And I don't think of myself as happy-go-lucky. I still feel like I'm very aware of my inner world. I'm not mindless of it. I'm not just whistling a happy tune, but I know the tools, I know the currency, and I've gathered that currency so that I can move from here to here, and that it's become more and more of a choice and more of the default choice.
So before we get into some of the tools you love for creating currency for expanding your wealth to be able to make that choice consistently, I have to say we've had a lot of love on comments.
Oh, cool.
From my dear friends Alex Swanson and Jennifer Gerald. And Jennifer Gerald says this right up for the next part of this discussion. The decision to be happy is just the first step, she says. So what are the next steps in developing enough capital to choose to be happy?
I'm loving this metaphor, I've got to say. I really am. Hey, Jen, thank you. And Eric, dude, good to see you guys. Okay, so as Jen says, the very first step in that journey toward emotional freedom, toward happiness, toward just being able to feel free inside of your skin, anxiety-free, pain-free, etc., is the first step is I'm making a decision. I'm saying that is the direction I want to be traveling in. I don't want to spend my time focusing on the negative. I don't want to spend my time focusing on what doesn't work. I want to be happy. I want that to be the benchmark that I'm moving toward. The second step, in my personal sense of, or my personal journey and what I've experienced and what I've written about, is that if that is in fact your choice, that is where you want your life to head, the next thing you need to do is kind of a mental inventory. And you need to discover how and in what ways are you falling short of the ideals of like living a quality life? Are you being a good person? Are you being acting within certain moral confines? Do you have integrity? Have you created any discipline in your life, right? So that, we always talk about get up in the morning and make your bed, right? What are the things that you're doing on a regular basis, the systems, the rituals, you've got to create a structure. Like if you're a painter and you want to paint a beautiful painting, you have to have something to paint it on. Right? And so the foundation you're going to paint this beautiful life on is going to be the canvas of integrity, the canvas of responsibility, right?
Well, what if I'm taking the inventory and as I'm doing it, I'm just becoming more stressed out because I don't necessarily like.
You don't like what you find on the inventory? It's like, oh my God, I might as well give up. You're like trying to do a mental inventory, but you're like, eating pistachios and throwing those shells on the floor, and they're like this deep on the floor, and you've got no order in your life whatsoever. That's where I say wash one dish, which is where, you take whatever bizarre mess you've made of your life, and you just decide that you're going to take one small step in the direction of improving that. And like, you don't let some of this, understand that most of this is sort of cyclic. So when you hit the next step, it makes the step before it easier. It's like the prerequisite comes after the thing itself. So we're going to be circling back with that question and learning how to become more and more and more tolerant of our own shortcomings. So when you first start out, you're not very tolerant of your own shortcomings. That means you're not even particularly tolerant of the fact that you're intolerant. You're not very tolerant of the fact that you don't have any order or structure in your life, and you need some. So you just start small. It's like when you start exercising, you don't start with big weights, you start with small weights, right? So little things. And I say, again, wash one dish. If my house is a big mess and I'm too overwhelmed to take care of it, and it's stressing me out to think about what a mess my house is, what I do is I say, I'm going to wash one dish.
So maybe pick one pistachio shell off the floor.
One pistachio shell off the floor, exactly. Now, I don't know if the one pistachio shell, is that half of a pistachio, or is it the whole thing is a pistachio shell? This could be a problem.
Yeah, depending on your mood, how much you can do. That's how you define a pistachio.
Okay, there you go. So, like, it could be a cup or it could be a big bowl, but whatever you're going to wash first, just take that first step. Wash one dish or hire a cleaning crew, says Eric.
Nice.
So now you see what he's doing there is he's like, he is creating a metaphor that we're going to be able to work our way into later about mentoring and coaching and things. But to start with, my view is, as best you can, you've got to start building some structure, some organization, some integrity, some predictability into your life.
So take the inventory and then start building the structure one dish a pistachio shell at a time.
Yeah. The other thing is acknowledging, I mean, if we're talking here about making the journey peaceful, and as opposed to feeling like every step along the way you're just coming up against how lousy you're doing, is celebrating the good stuff. Look at all the pistachio shells that you already picked up before. Look how many pistachio shells you didn't get onto the floor yet. So yeah, there are a lot of things we're already doing that represent this principle, right? You could, and that could be one of the ways that you empower yourself. You say, let me make a list of all the ways in which I've already been living my life with integrity, with order. As celebrate the wins, right? That's game. So that kind of combination of celebrating the wins and also watching for and looking for other opportunities to be more effective, more structured. In the old Carlos Castaneda books, The Teachings of Don Juan, he talked about the tonal and the nagual, which are these two elements of humanity. One of them is how you kind of show up, your overall, the way you carry yourself, your posture, so to speak. And if you're neat and orderly, or you're slovenly and falling apart, that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect is where you go from there. Right? Where do you go from there? So first first you create the structure, and then the next step. So for the very first step we said is, as Jen said, is just deciding you want it. Right? The next step is to start creating this structure, this order, and celebrating the wins and whatnot. And then the third step is to what I call sharpen your focus.
Sharpen your focus.
Yeah, when it comes to our focus muscles, we are 90-pound weaklings.
Ooh. When it comes to our focus muscles, we are 90-pound weaklings.
Yeah. We don't practice it. We've never been taught to practice it. And unless maybe you've gone through some kind of Zen training or military training or something where the whole name of the game is being able to bring yourself into the present moment, then if you haven't been doing that, then what's the alternative? The alternative is your mind just flows off in every other possible direction, right? You don't have an anchor, you don't have a rudder, so to speak.
Mm.
So sharpening your focus muscles, that's where mindfulness practices come in. That's why for me, in my journey through this process, going from feeling hopeless and miserable and anxious all the time to where I am right now, which is slightly less hopeless, miserable, and anxious, and is that you begin to realize that your brain is not your friend. Your brain, your thoughts, when you identify with those thoughts, can lead you astray. And I mean, at any one given moment, stop yourself and look at what you're thinking. What are you saying to yourself that you don't even realize that you're saying to yourself, because it's become such an invisible process? It's the water to the fish.
Mm. So Alex says eloquently, sharpen your F, and he puts in that blank focus. So if a person is really scattered in their mind, and their mind just taking them a million different places, how do they start sharpening the F?
We sell these files, and you just no. What you've got to do is you start with any small thing that would potentially be a point of focus that you're not used to using as a point of focus. For example, one of my favorite ones to talk about is washing your dishes. We already talked about wash one dish, but what are you doing while you're washing your dishes?
Thinking about the news, thinking about what I have to do tomorrow, on and on.
Exactly. So you could be doing, because it's one of those activities for which it's not impossible to do it in a distracted fashion. You could be washing your dishes, watching TV, thinking about the fight you had with your husband or your wife, and your brain is still going a mile a minute. And yet, if you were to just make a simple choice, like, I'm going to focus on this one dish while I wash it, and I'm going to treat this dish as if it were the most cherished, beloved child, and just wash it with complete reverence and love, and celebrate this dish, and then put that dish aside. Now, it sounds stupid, yes, but at the same time, it's a practicable skill. You'll find your mind wants to wander, but you've already decided, no, this is too important it's too important not to pay full attention to.
And theoretically, we could practice this skill anywhere from 5 minutes a day to 16 or 17 hours a day, depending on how much it mattered to us.
And how many dishes you have.
And how many dishes you have.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Because the skill applies to almost anything. You could use that same exact process while walking. I do this with Woody when we go out for a walk. I just pay attention to my feet as they touch the ground. I just put my attention for a time on the sensation of my feet as they press into the ground with each step. And again, my mind doesn't want to do that. My mind wants to go off and think about a million different things. But if I've chosen that I'm going to direct my attention to my feet, then either I'm doing it successfully, or I'm aware that I'm not doing it successfully, which basically means I'm still in a state of awareness. I may not be succeeding at the thing, but at least I know that that was a thought that I just had. I'm not lost in it.
So you're saying when we practice mindfulness, we don't have to do it perfectly.
Oh, no, you have to do it perfectly. Otherwise, yeah, exactly. So this is another great example of your imperfect best, right? It's funny how often we will take these tools, these exercises, and flagellate ourselves, beat ourselves up because we're not doing them perfectly. And yet, as soon as you start getting a little traction with them, you start realizing how funny that is. It's just hilarious. I remember one day I had scheduled meditation for a particular time of day. And I was in the car going home to meditate, and I was late for meditation. And I was getting agitated about being late for meditation. That's funny.
Getting agitated about being late to
Relax.
down and be peaceful.
Yeah, to be here now, right? So I am somewhere now, but I'm worried about the fact that I'm not over here now. It's hilarious. It's like I could literally be meditating in the moment that I'm in the car on my way home to meditate, but instead I'm upset about not being there. That's the story of our lives.
Yeah, yeah. But sometimes this becomes even harder, though. I mean, sure, being mindful and paying attention to each dish on a good day, it sounds fine, Steve. But what happens when you have unexpected house guests, for instance? Do you just throw the furry baby out with the bathwater and stop all around, or what do you do?
That's a great question. By the way, I just wanted to point out, because I'm watching the stream of comments, and Eric's made a few comments about mindfulness, and he mentions The Power of Now, which is really my favorite book, and a great book for understanding this concept of being in the present moment. And Jen is saying how much she's enjoying this. I love you guys. I'm so glad you're here watching and participating. Something years ago will never try to accomplish it. Okay, so I think that was something about multitasking, right? Rest your mind on trying to accomplish it all at the same time. Taught me something years ago that I will never get everything done. So rest your mind. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So we think we're going to get it all. Have you ever been in the car and you're stuck in traffic and you want to get somewhere? And if you're really sensitive, you become aware that you're going like this. Like you're literally scooching your butt. Like it's like a psychological thing. You don't even know you're doing it, but like you think somehow that you're gonna push the river. You're gonna move things along with a sheer force of will. It's hilarious. Have you ever done that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing when we watch like a professional football game. We think that how mad we get at the screen's going to do something.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. We're hilarious creatures. So you asked me a question, and now it's
about what do you do? I mean, mindfulness is fine and good on a good day, but what do you do when there's intrusive thoughts, really intrusive thoughts, or literally intrusive house guests? Do you just throw it all out? And
no, I've got something for that too. So here's what happens. We've started to evolve a system here, right? We're talking about that you've got to create the willingness and the desire, and then you've got to go through a structural kind of a mental inventory and make sure that your life is structured in a way that works. Then you could do this sort of practicing mindfulness, practicing presence, getting focused sort of thing. And then what starts to happen is then you start to move into the next realm of this, which is where, having practiced presence and become aware that there's a difference between being present and being stuck in your thoughts, and you start being able to make the distinction, then you start to have this new place from which to watch your life unfold. So you're like watching yourself while you're living your life, and then things happen. So for example, like the example you gave, the either literal unwanted house guest or the unwanted house guest in your brain comes along, and you realize that there are levels or layers of suffering, right? So there's the suffering, the initial suffering of having had a disquieting thought. But then there's also another level of suffering where you now start being upset about that you had a disquieting thought. And then maybe you're upset about the fact that you're upset.
As we develop this metaphor, will you please talk about your unwanted house guests because it's so good to to understand this concept.
Keep it on that metaphor.
Yeah, but talk about the house guest you had a week or so ago.
Okay. Well, let me finish this concept, and then we'll bring it to the reality of that. Okay. So the concept is that you need to understand that you have a choice of how you respond to those unwanted house guests, and the ones that we're about to talk about. So last week or the week before, I was visited upon by squirrels. I live in a very kind of woody area. There's trees around me all over, in a lake, and there's lots of squirrels around. Eric knows the place where I live. His dad used to live right here, and we we see squirrels left and right every day, all day long. And every once in a great while, a squirrel will find its way like into the chimney or something. You could hear it scratching around in the walls, and usually that's very short lived, and they come in and they get into the wall somehow, but they go right back out again. But we have this sort of peaceful détente. I live inside, they live outside. We all understand the rules.
Good boundaries.
Yeah, we have good boundaries, right? Like the good fences make good neighbors. And now I've got a few squirrels who could be a little bit on the aggressive side. Like my friend who used to live here with me for a while when he needed a place to stay, used to love to go out and feed the squirrels out back, and he'd bring seeds, and he got to where some squirrels would come up on his hand and they'd eat out of his hand. But then that was great for the squirrels that were doing it. But then when he wasn't around, they'd like jump up on the screen, and they'd be like, it looks like a horror movie. You'd have these, and that was back when Woody used to be very troubled by squirrels. Now he's gotten older and more mellow. So the other day, I'm hearing sounds in the wall adjacent to my chimney, which is right there. So you see that wall is like, there's the fireplace and the TV above the fireplace, and that wall that kind of comes out and around, right? And
from your TV.
What's that?
The sounds were not coming out of your TV.
No, these were actually, well, the TV was off, so I think not. And I was hearing scratching sounds, and it became clear that there was something in the wall. And my first thought was, I knew it was a squirrel. It had to be a squirrel, just by the volume and everything. And I was afraid that the squirrel was stuck in the wall. Like, the thing is, the way in would be through the chimney. And I called up the people who manage the properties here, and I said, I think there's a squirrel caught in my wall, and he's scratching away, and he's making all kinds of terrible noises, and we got to get him out, And I don't know how he got in there, but I want to get him out. And she said, "Oh, those these squirrels, sometimes they just they find their way in at the top of the chimney, and they fall all the way down into the wall." And then she says, eventually it'll just die there.
Ooh.
And I was like, I'm not leaving a squirrel to die in my wall and like listen to it scream. And she's like, well, it won't smell when it dies. And, the sound will only be there for a couple of days. I was like, that's not the point. The point is that there's a living creature suffering and scared to death and starving to death inside of my wall. That's not acceptable. So I was getting ready to go through this whole process to get the squirrel out. I even got my neighbor to lend me a Sawzall, and I was going to cut a hole and let the squirrel come out that way. Now Eric brings up this thing, like build a fire. She totally would have said that too. That was that, just light a fire in the fireplace and the heat will kill the squirrel. It's like, no, we're not going that route. So now I'm like getting ready to let the squirrel out through the wall, and before I did that, I was taking Woody for a walk. So I take him for a walk, and I come back again. And as I open up the front door, this squirrel comes running out of my kitchen, leaps across the dining room table, the couch, and back to the hole. Because there's a little hole between the like up along that wall where you imagine there'd be like a a plate for a plug or something, but it's an open hole because there's a wire that comes in and out for my TV set. So he just jumps in that hole. So now I know he can get in or out. So I'm no longer feeling this terrible, painful sympathy for this thing anymore. And now I'm just aware that there's a squirrel living in my house who has unfettered access to my house.
So did you start running around and pulling your hair out and doing nothing else but thinking the squirrel shouldn't be here?
I was wringing my hands and saying, "Woe is me," and crying and screaming. And I didn't have any kind of real negative response to the whole thing. It was kind of curious. I had this sort of, "You don't belong here" kind of an attitude toward him. And it was more like just trying to solve a problem, because I knew that I didn't want to block that hole up. I was going to try to block it temporarily until I could get a trap. Actually, what I decided to try was I was going to block it up, and then I was going to create some kind of a pathway to the front door or the back door. So he would just go out the back door. So what I did was I blocked it up at one point. I tried blocking it another time, and he just pushed it open. He can get in or out. He could. I mean, you could put almost anything against that thing. I think you could put a cinder block. The squirrels could push it open. So as far as the squirrel was concerned, he basically was moving in. He was now my roommate. He was living here in the house, and if I went for a walk, he'd come and kind of wander around the house. And the next time I came back, there was my afternoon snack was a half a banana, and it was all peeled and it was half eaten. So the squirrel could come in, and then he saw me and he ran back to the hole and stood in the hole screaming at me like, "You ruined my dinner. I was eating and you ruined my dinner. What's with you, dude?" So he was not particularly happy about that. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to give him like a route to get out, because maybe he can't figure out. I left the door open a couple times hoping he would leave. I don't want to leave it open too long in case he wanted to invite friends. So I opened the back slider, and I took this like Indian bedspread that I have, and I tacked it to the wall right by the hole, and then I tacked the other side over by the slider. So it formed like a barrier. So if he came out of the hole, the logical thing to do would be just follow the barrier right to the open door. Instead, he tried to climb up the cloth, and then he realized that wasn't a good idea. Went back down the cloth, jumped over the cloth, right over Woody, who just watched him do this. It's like, hi. Had no reaction to it whatsoever. And then he ran across the dining room into the kitchen. I went in the kitchen. He ran upstairs. I went upstairs. I left the open door down here. He came downstairs, but he didn't go out the door, and he went back to his hole again. And then I was like, okay, well, we're gonna take care of this tomorrow. I ordered a have-a-heart trap, and I'm sitting here, and I hear a little scratching in the wall, and then I hear like this jangling kind of noise, a scratching like against the blinds. I was like, what's that? And I go upstairs, and there's another squirrel. And the way I could see, because there's a tail sticking out between the Venetian blinds. He's like hiding, but his tail is sticking out. It's like, do you see me? So I tried to chase that one out, and he also went in the hole. He or she, I don't know. And so we just had this thing going back and forth. And again, the whole time I was realizing this is kind of an interesting thing. It's Woody is laying on the couch watching, and unless the squirrel literally jumps on him, I don't think he's going to be bothered by it. And yeah, we just had this little sort of relationship going. And then I ordered this trap, and the night before the trap arrived, I left the door open while I took Woody for a walk, hoping that they would leave. And I came back again, and I think maybe they left because I haven't heard a sound since. And they left like exactly just before the trap arrived, which is like when you buy an umbrella and then it never rains again. So now I've got a squirrel trap and nothing to do with it. And yeah, so I think they were trying to build a nest. They were trying to like make themselves a nice cozy little spot inside of my fireplace. And anyway, there was a point to the story, right? Which is that's one of those things that I would tell that story to people, I'd be like, hey, I've got a squirrel in my house. And people were like, oh my God, oh, what are you doing? They were like freaked out. And I was like, I'm the one here with the squirrel and I'm not freaked out. Why are you freaked out? So
last question, and then I need to show you the revised intro before we leave.
okay.
But last question. So what were you? Because we constantly have squirrels, quote unquote, squirrels in our lives, like economic uncertainty, pandemic, individual things, computer problems. So you've been developing advice during a whole talk about how to deal calmly with the squirrels in our lives. But any final words of wisdom on how?
Up to this point in your life, up to this point in my life, you've survived. Chances are good that you'll continue to do so. Most of the things that you ever troubled yourself about, fretted about, freaked out about, either never came to pass or they did and it wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be. Certainly wasn't fatal, that we know for sure.
Yeah, and we can pat ourselves on the back for that.
Right. So if it doesn't kill you, it's life. It's just life, right? So most things that aren't good experiences become good stories. And so we could look at it that way. It's really always a question of reframing it. I mean, there are a million jokes we can create from what just happened in my life. There's going to be a lot of joy brought by that experience. And I think in many ways, those are the experiences that enrich our lives in the long run. So I've recently reconnected in my mind with the movie Shawshank Redemption. And I was realizing that that's like the perfect metaphor for life. Andy Dufresne, the character in Shawshank, who is incarcerated under false pretenses. He doesn't belong in jail, but he spends 40 years there for a crime he didn't commit. And somehow he manages to walk around the prison yard just smiling as if he's just out for a walk. And, withstanding all of the effrontery that happens, people who attack him, he just takes it in stride, and he applies resourcefulness and resilience and a sense of humor, and he remains generous, and he helps other people out, and he accepts the situation he's living in. But for that 40-year period, while he's accepting the situation, he's gradually digging himself out of jail. So it's not.
He's doing both.
He's doing both. And that's the thing. It's like, just because you want out doesn't mean you can't accept where you are now while you're busy working your way methodically out.
That's so good. It's so good. Just because you want out doesn't mean you can't accept where you are now. Like right now, you're accepting that I'm typing this.
I love this. First of all, I always appreciate when you stop me in the middle of accidentally saying something worth quoting and you write it down, because I never do. And then I always wish I had. So I'm glad we got that. You probably clicked on one of the comment buttons or something. I have Jennifer's name there. Look at that.
That was supposed to be
on my website?
Just because.
You trying to put mine up?
Because we want out. mean we can't accept
Dialectics.
where we are now. This is not smooth in the least, Steve.
I didn't come for smooth. I came for fun.
Yeah. And so in honor of your story and your buddy, we have this to show you. Look, look at how far you have come.
Right on. That was me and a squirrel. That was a mystery squirrel. Nobody in my family knows how that picture got taken.
Such a fascinating story. We could literally talk about this stuff for hours and days and develop more metaphors, and it would be awesome. But and I had so many more things I wanted to get to with you, but thanks for giving not just gems, but giving people an idea of how to live a simpler, more mindful life, not by resisting life and killing all the squirrels, but by living with the squirrels and taking steps to adjust to each other and find what works.
Right on. Thank you. Thanks. It's that's my jam. It's what I love to do, and as do you. So that's, I think, why we're friends, because we both have that commitment not to let that stuff get to us.
We do. Oh, lastly, so viewers are going to want to connect with you more because you have presence, you're a healer, you're brilliant. So what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Well, there's a couple things. One is, my website is stevetaubman.com, which is Steve, Taubman.com. And that's where you'll find information about me as a speaker and some of my products and programs. And now I'm doing a lot of work in the area of healing anxiety and chronic pain. So we've got websites for those as well. Can I say what those are too?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So theanxietydoc.net. So theanxietydoc.net is if you're interested in talking to me about how you would overcome stress and anxiety. That's the work that I do in that area is really powerful, and it's a combination of mindfulness and hypnosis and some cognitive stuff, and it's really powerful and very effective. And then if you're looking to explore some of the stuff we're doing in chronic pain, my business partner in that is Dr. Tim Warren. And we've got a really cool product out right now called the Pain Switch. And the website for that is getthepainswitch.com. Getthepainswitch.com. So those will be the three best ways to reach out at this point. Are you typing that up?
I mean, I need to be true to the awkwardly awesome of the podcast. Yeah. So
there we go.
Let's get the anxiety doctor.
The Anxiety Doc, just DOC. Theanxietydoc.net. Thank you, Jan.
I don't know how to spell doc today. Do you ever have days when you don't know how to spell doc, Steve?
Yeah, all the time.
And there's the anxietydoc.net.
Oh yeah, that should be .net, not .com.
Oh, half of this podcast is
just you typing.
Everyone watching me type things. So is that it?
It hasn't changed yet. Yep, that's it. TheAnxietyDoc.net. So those are two cool sites, and we're pretty proud of the stuff we're doing with the pain switch. Is an online mini course. It's basically a series of tools and strategies that you can learn pretty quickly that begin to give you the the first steps to being able to master pain through the use of your own mind.
That is so valuable. Think of what Steve just said, the ability to master pain.
Yeah.
Through the use of master. So to the ability to create more pain in my body through the use of my mind.
To create more pain, yeah, if you want. I wouldn't recommend that approach. But,
so the ability to relieve pain through the use of the mind.
Absolutely, yeah. So we can literally bypass pain circuits in our brain. The pain circuits are neurologically wired by constant repetition. And so if there's been a significant trauma, the initial pain is real pain based on real bodily damage. But the pain that continues for weeks and months thereafter, the chronic, the long-term pain, is a brain phenomenon, and it's because the pathways have been carved, and we're using them. We're using them as our default pathways. And through thought and mindfulness and some other tools, you can bypass those nerve pain pathways and stop pain in its tracks. Jen has a good story about that. She'll have to share sometime.
That could be transformative for people living in all kinds of serious pain to
think of what chronic pain does in people's lives, and the depression, the anxiety, the sense of isolation, the fact that nobody believes them when they say they're in pain because people just think they're being lazy and they're pretending. So it's this incredible constant stress and suffering upon stress and suffering, and it really ruins people's lives. And you could go through years just living a small life, and then by learning these things, as Jen says, it could change your life. You don't have to live with that pain.
I guess it's sometimes hard. I know it was hard for me when I was enmeshed in I'm disabled to think of something beyond that. But we humans are so capable of growth and transformation.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying for someone in pain, the strategies.
Yeah, well, and like we started,
right?
Yeah, and like what we said when we first started this whole thing out was like what Jen said, you got to be willing. It's a first step. It's not the only step, but you have to be willing to rise above, to transform your viewpoint. So you're looking at things from a different place. And when you're stuck in something, or you're stuck in pain, you're stuck in depression, it's very hard to believe, let alone experience, an alternate reality. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Oh, we could literally just keep going, because this would take us into hypnosis and all kinds of things. But for now, thank you so much for coming on.
This has been great. Invite me back anytime. I love being with you here, and it's a great show. So,
and let's thank our wonderful commenters, Eric and Jen, for.
Yeah, thank you guys for participating, saying such awesome things. Cool.
Cool, cool, cool. So now we're ending. Just stay on for 60.
Okay.